I woke up to the sound of my land being invaded not by wild animals, not by a storm, but by 100 uninvited strangers setting up camp like they own the place. I stood on my porch gripping my coffee mug a little too tight, watching in sheer disbelief as tents popped up, bonfires blazed, and laughter filled the air. A group of teenagers ran past my barn with beer cans in hand, while a couple of families laid out picnic blankets near my pond, their kids already splashing in the water, and at the center of it all, standing like a self-appointed queen, was Karen, the most insufferable HOA president to ever exist, waving her hands and directing people like she was hosting a grand festival. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and made my way down the dirt path toward the chaos. As I approached, a man with sunglasses and a ridiculous floral shirt tipped his beer can at me. "Hey man, great spot you got here. Karen really hooked us up, hooked them up. That was Rich who said you could be here." I asked, my voice steady but laced with enough irritation to turn heads. Karen turned around dramatically, a smug smile plastered on her face. "Oh Tom, don't be so grumpy. It's just one night. The community needed a little getaway, and your land is just sitting here, wasted potential." "Really?" She waved her hand dismissively, as if my private property was an abandoned parking lot. "Wasted potential," I repeated, narrowing my eyes. Karen sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "It's not a big deal. I made a post in the neighborhood group. Everyone was so excited about camping out here. Fresh air, a little nature. What's the harm?" I inhaled sharply, pushing down the urge to remind her that this land had been in my family for generations, that every inch of it had been worked on, built, and protected with sweat and effort. But Karen never listened to things like that. She only heard what she wanted to hear. "And what part of that post included my permission?" I asked. She laughed, actually laughed like I was the crazy one. "Oh Tom, don't be so possessive. It's just land. And anyway, everyone's already here. What do you want me to do? Send them all home?" She gestured around dramatically, and a few campers stopped to listen in, murmuring among themselves, "Yes, that's exactly what I want," I said flatly. Karen's face twitched just slightly, that flicker of irritation she always got when someone dared to challenge her, but then she tilted her chin up and put on that practiced patronizing tone. "Look, it's just one night. Don't be such a stick in the mud. We'll be gone in the morning, and no harm done." I glanced around at the beer cans already littering the ground, the smoke rising from an unauthorized bonfire, and the man currently hammering a tent stake directly into the roots of one of my oldest oak trees. "No harm done," I echoed, my patience wearing thinner by the second. Karen rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. The HOA board fully supports community events like this." I smirked. "Well, that's funny, Karen, because my land isn't part of the HOA." For the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a quick moment of realization that she might have stepped over a line. But Karen was never one to admit defeat so easily. "Oh, technicalities," she huffed. "But it's all about the spirit of the community, right?" I fold my arms, letting the silence stretch long enough for her to feel it. She waved a hand as if brushing away my concerns. "Oh, lighten up, Tom. It's not like you even use this land for anything important. What's the harm in sharing it for one night?" I let out a slow breath, my eyes scanning the chaotic scene before me. Then an idea started forming. A slow, deliberate grin spread across my face. "Fine," I said, stepping back. Karen blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "Wait, really?" I nodded, my smirk deepening. "Sure, but I hope you and your guests are early risers." She frowned, slightly trying to read between the lines, but the lure of victory was too strong for her to question it. She gave me a satisfied nod and turned back to the crowd. "See, everyone, no problem at all. Let the camping begin." I watched as they cheered, oblivious to what was coming. The night unfolded exactly how I expected: loud music, drunken laughter, and enough stupidity to make me reconsider the intelligence of my neighbors. A group of men took it upon themselves to borrow firewood, which just so happened to be my fence post. Someone set up a grill dangerously close to my barn, and if I hadn't been watching, I would have woken up to a disaster by midnight. Most of them had passed out in their tents, the music finally dying down. I stood at my window looking over the field of intruders, my mind already set on what I had planned for sunrise, because Karen and her merry band of trespassers had made one fatal mistake. They had camped on the wrong side of my land, the side where my bulls roamed. I could already see it now, the sun barely crusting over the horizon, the first groggy camper stumbling out of their tents only to find themselves face to face with a herd of my biggest, most energetic bulls. Released at the perfect moment, I took one last sip of my coffee and went to bed with a smile on my face. Tomorrow was going to be fun. The night stretched on, filled with the kind of noise that made my skin crawl. Beer cans clinked, music blared, and every few minutes someone let out a drunken whoop, like they had just discovered fire. I watched from my porch, shaking my head as a couple of guys decided my barn wall was a good place to relieve themselves. Others had ventured too close to my pond, splashing around like they were on a tropical vacation. Karen sat in the center of it all, basking in the glow of her self-importance, sipping wine like she had personally orchestrated a grand festival. The fence thieves had made some real progress. What had been a sturdy wooden barrier just hours ago was now a pitiful row of broken posts stripped down for firewood. I clenched my jaw but didn't say a word. Let them enjoy their little victory. They had no idea what was coming. As the hours dragged on, the energy faded one by one. The camper started turning in for the night. Tents filled by bonfires died down, and the once lively field of chaos turned into a snoring, tangled mess of bodies. Even Karen, who had spent half the night declaring this the best community event in history, had finally shut up and retreated into her oversized tent. I took one last look at the scene, then turned toward the barn. The bulls were waiting, restless, eager. I had kept them penned up all night, and they didn't like it one bit. By sunrise, they'd be more than ready to stretch their legs. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a soft glow over my land. A thick mist lingered in the fields, swirling between the tents. The air was still peaceful, the perfect contrast to the chaos that was about to unfold. I walked to the barn, boots crunching against the dirt. The bulls snorted, shifting in their pens. Sensing the change in the air, I ran a hand over the gate, feeling the solid weight of it, then reached for the latch. With a single deliberate motion, I lifted it. The gate swung open. For a moment nothing happened. Then the lead bull, a massive beast named Red, stepped forward, and all hell broke loose. I took another sip of my coffee. Funny you weren't too worried about safety when they were breaking my fence, swimming in my pond, and setting fires near my barn. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for a response. Another bull let out a loud snort, sending a group of campers sprinting toward their car. Finally, she jabbed a finger in my face. "This isn't over, Tom. I'm calling the HOA board. You'll be hearing from them." I arched an eyebrow. "Go right ahead, but I'm pretty sure they don't have jurisdiction over my ranch." She blinked. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She had spent the entire night throwing around her self-proclaimed authority, only to realize now that she had absolutely none. I watched as the panic set in. People were already packing up, scrambling to shove their things into cars, desperate to escape. The once lively camp looked like a battlefield, strewn with broken tents, scattered trash, and abandoned coolers. Karen spun back to face the chaos, watching as her grand camping event crumbled before her eyes. This wasn't just a disaster, it was a humiliation, and I enjoyed every second of it. Karen stood in the middle of the chaos, her face twisted in disbelief as her grand event fell apart around her. The once celebratory campers were now a scrambling, shrieking mess, dragging their half-packed bags toward their cars, some still tangled in tent ropes, others desperately trying to salvage their belongings from the stampeding bulls. The Loud hum of engines revving filled the air as people abandoned whatever wasn't worth the risk peeling out of my land as fast as their tires could take them. A man tripped over a cooler sending ice and soda cans flying. Another guy tried to wrestle his folding chair from under a snorting bull only to give up and sprint for safety instead. Someone had left a speaker on still blasting music until a bull accidentally kicked it, sending it spinning across the dirt like a rogue tumbleweed. Karen's hands clenched into fists, her face cycling through emotions faster than I thought possible: shock, rage, disbelief, frustration. She turned on me, eyes blazing. You are going to regret this, Tom. She spat, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at my chest. This is illegal. I am calling the authorities. You can't just let wild animals attack people. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching her unravel with the satisfaction of a man who had been waiting for this moment all night. Wild animals, Karen, they're my bulls. I let them out for their morning grace. It's not my fault you and your little fan club decided to camp in their field. Her face turned a shade of red that I was almost certain wasn't healthy. You knew exactly what you were doing. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Well, I did try to warn you. She let out a frustrated growl, her hand shaking with rage. She whirled around looking for support, but her army was long gone. The campers who hadn't managed to escape yet were too busy saving themselves to care about their so-called leader. Then, as if the universe had been waiting for the perfect moment, a truck pulled up, kicking up dust as it came to a stop near the wreckage of what had once been a campsite. Out stepped Sheriff Dawson. Karen's eyes widened, her expression flickering with hope. Oh, thank God, she gasped, practically running toward him. Sheriff, arrest this man. He released wild bulls on us. This was a peaceful community event and he set us up. Sheriff Dawson adjusted his belt, his face unreadable as he glanced between Karen and me, taking in the wreckage of her so-called retreat. Then he sighed and pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Karen, he said, his voice calm but firm, we need to have a talk. Karen blinked. Yes, thank you. Arrest him immediately. Sheriff Dawson glanced at me, and I gave him a small nod. We had known each other for years. I had called him the night before, just after Karen's little stunt, and he had been more than happy to help me straighten things out. He unfolded the paper and held it up. First off, let's start with this: an official trespassing complaint filed by Tom last night. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Trespassing, she choked out like the word itself was offensive. Sheriff Dawson nodded. Yep, you and about 100 other people. This is private property. Karen, you didn't have permission to be here. Karen's face twisted. That's ridiculous. This land is part of the community. Sheriff Dawson raised an eyebrow. Is it? Because according to county records, this land belongs to Tom, and last time I checked, your HOA rules don't extend past your own neighborhood. Karen stumbled over her words, but he wasn't done. Second, he continued, flipping through his notes. We've got property damage reports of broken fences, stolen firewood, damage to the barn, littering. He gestured toward the field where the remnants of the party lay scattered in the dirt. That's all on you since you organized this event without the owner's consent. Karen's confidence was cracking like glass under pressure. She let out a nervous laugh, shaking her head. This is all just a misunderstanding. It was supposed to be a community retreat. Everyone was so excited. Karen, Sheriff Dawson interrupted. You charged people to come here, didn't you? Her face paled. What? No, I mean, I may have collected small donations to help with supplies, but small donations. I cut in, pulling out my phone. I had taken a screenshot of her social media post before she could delete it. I turned the screen toward Sheriff Dawson. She was charging a $50 entry fee for an exclusive HOA nature getaway. Karen's face drained of all color. Sheriff Dawson let out a slow whistle. Well, that's interesting. See, Karen, that makes this a whole different situation. Now we're looking at unauthorized event hosting, potential fraud charges, and illegally collecting money on someone else's property. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her brain was scrambling for a way out, but there was none now. Normally, Sheriff Dawson continued, a situation like this would come with some hefty fines, maybe even a nice little visit to the courthouse, but I'm feeling generous today, so I'll make you a deal. Karen clutched at the last bit of hope she had left. Yes, a deal. That sounds great. You And your HOA buddies are going to pay Tom back for every bit of damage you caused, every fence post, every piece of trash, every bit of destruction you left behind. And he added, giving her a pointed look. You are never to set foot on this land again without permission. Karen swallowed hard, her eyes darting around, as if searching for a way out. There was none. And if I refuse, she whispered, her voice small. Sheriff Dawson smiled. Then I process these complaints and you can explain yourself to a judge. Silence then. Karen, for the first time in her life, made the smart choice. She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. She muttered, I'll pay for the damages. Sheriff Dawson tipped his hat. Good. That's what I thought. As he walked back to his truck, Karen turned back to me, her eyes burning with humiliation. You think you've won, she hissed. I took one last sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest before flashing her a slow, satisfied grin. I don't think, Karen. I know. She spun on her heel and stomped toward her car, her shoulders tense with rage. The last remaining campers piled in, desperate to get as far away from my land as possible. Within minutes, the field was empty save for the trampled tents and scattered debris left behind. The next morning, I posted on the HOA Facebook page, *, next time you visit my land, Karen, bring a tent, preferably one that's bulletproof. *. I sat back grinning at as the comments flooded in, and just like that, the HOA learned a very valuable lesson. Never mess with a rancher.